Joshua Morales podcast.
All right, so Jay Gonzalez is in the house, and I don't even think I have to tell anybody about you. So I think you unequivocally, is that how you say the word, are one of the most famous lawyers here in the Rio Grande Valley. And what I really like about you is that you advertise and you market the crap out of your brand, which is what I love, because I'm a digital marketer and I push this stuff on people, and they just will not do it or will not invest enough. And I believe truly that the ones that have the deep pockets to do this, stay in front of people's faces long enough, are going to be the ones that reign at the top. And I think you've proven that.
You know, Josh, it's funny that you say that, because on my way over here to go to do this podcast, I was having a conversation with Myra, who's my consultant, my media consultant. And, we were talking about how in this ultra hyper competitive sector, the personal injury sector, there are lawyers that have said that this year they've experienced more business. I'm talking about 2020 with COVID and everything that happened with the shelter in place orders and the quarantines and the less traffic, people more hesitant to go and get medical attention because of an accident and their injuries because they're afraid of COVID. Yet you've got some lawyers that said, I've had more success with new business under these circumstances than before. And the common denominator among all of them is they were unknowns before. They didn't have billboards. They didn't advertise. They weren't on social media. They weren't on TV. They weren't on the radio. And so it's a testament to marketing works.
Yeah.
Period.
Yep.
It works. Now, where it's tricky is when you don't advertise at all and you get business. How much did that cost you? The cost per lead is basically zero in terms of marketing, right? And then all of a sudden you start marketing and your cost per lead goes through the roof. And if you don't get enough clients, you look at your bottom line and you're like, man, I'm just basically working to pay TV stations. I'm just working to pay, Facebook. I'm paying Google. I'm paying the radio stations. And what's left for me?
Yeah.
Nothing. You might as well give me a company logo shirt that says I'm working for them because I'm not earning any money for myself. And so the trick is, how do you get beyond not having any return? And part of that formula is, one, you better have a good product. You better provide a good service. Yeah. You better be marketable. And you better have good strategies to launch a marketing campaign. And then patience. You better be patient. Some people, they want to have success overnight. And when they don't get it, they pull the plug. And Josh, honestly, in terms of real success, it never happens overnight. It doesn't happen in a month. It doesn't even happen in a year. I mean, I've been at it for 20 years now. We're celebrating our 20th anniversary.
Nice.
And even today, I can tell you, business is a struggle. It's still a struggle for me. And, there's no, I was watching an animation earlier today on The Lion King, where Simba decided, I'm out. I'm just going to eat veggies with my buddies and Hakuna Matata or whatever, and then
Hakuna Matata.
Life is beautiful here. I don't have to be a Lion King. I can just chill. In business, it's not like that.
Yeah.
You need to go out there and fight. And if you're going to be a Lion King, if you're going to be that person, what are you doing to battle every day? Because it's we call it business today. Back then, you lived in a castle, you put on your armor, you got on your horse, you got your other knights, and you tell your wife/queen, honey, I'll be back. Somebody's messing with our kingdom and we're about to lose a chunk of land. and I got to go fight.
You're going to war.
And it was war. Well, today, when somebody comes into your market, it's business, right? They're trying to take what you have. They're trying to take your market share. They're not using guns. They're not using cannons. They're not rolling in here with their, tanks. There's no aircraft carriers out there deploying F-16s. Although the top lawyer has been rumored to have an aircraft carrier, and the Chinese were going to invade the U.S. and they saw the top lawyer in his F-16 and said, you know what, let's not mess with
Leave
the
him
US.
alone.
And they went back to China. That's a true story. That was actually told to me by one of my primos in Mission.
That's awesome.
Who talked to my brother, and he says, hey, did you hear, man? The Chinese were going to invade, but then they saw top lawyer and they just turned back.
I'm out of here.
And so we're safe. We're safe. So there's a lot of myths and stuff like that, fact versus fiction when it comes to a lot of things that we've done marketing wise. No, my transformer's not real. I've been asked that question.
Wow.
Does it really transform? Does your Hummer really transform? No, it doesn't. That's a myth. I've been asked, are you really a migrant farm worker? Because you don't look like a migrant farm worker. And I'm thinking, well, what is a migrant farm worker supposed to look like?
Yeah.
My son right now has blue eyes, lighter skin than me. And if I had followed in the footsteps of my parents and said, hey, education's not for me, I'm just going to work in the fields, my son would be working in the fields with me right now. So, it's not about your skin color of eyes, or the color of your hair. I mean, it's just, if that's your life, that's your life. And then it's what you choose to make with it. But yes, I was a migrant farm worker, 17 years. I've been asked, were you really a teacher at La Jolla? And I go, yeah, I taught for 7 years. Do you really have a master's in educational administration? Yes, I do have a master's in educational administration. I wanted to be a principal. And not a lot of people know this, but I wanted to be a principal so badly, but nobody gave me a shot. I went to probably 30 interviews, and nobody wanted to hire me. Now, I was 26 years old. Perhaps maybe they thought I was too young. But it's just one of those things where yes, sometimes we've got to separate the fact from the fiction. And it's kind of fun, because the latest is, were you in the military? Well, no, that was just paying homage to the military. Growing up, I was 17 years old when Top Gun came out, and I loved the movie. And so I was just kind of paying homage to the movie, the idea, our veterans, the military. And so, no, I don't fly jets
Yet.
And yet, well, it's interesting you say that, because there have been some actors that have taken up things that have, because of the movie. For example, one of the questions that have been asked, that's not a myth, it is a fact. They're like, was that really you on the motorcycle in your top lawyer commercial? And that was me. I used to ride a Katana 600 back in 1991. Really enjoyed riding it, and then I switched over to a Harley once I became a lawyer. But yeah, Tom Cruise never rode a motorcycle until he had to.
Interesting. For
the movie Top Gun. And so yeah, no, that is a fact that I was riding that motorcycle. That is a 1963 Corvette that I own. We didn't borrow it from someone. We didn't, it wasn't animated. So it was in my garage for the last 5 years. And Enrique, who directed my commercial, said, what does a Corvette have to do with Top Gun?
It just looks cool.
Like it has nothing to do with that movie, Jesse. And I said, I don't care. I just love my car. And so some people have said, well, what inspired the commercial itself? And it was a real simple coincidence. Like a lot of things that have happened in my marketing life. For example, the Hummer being transformed, that came to be because, my employees didn't have reliable transportation. We would do home intakes because clients didn't have cars to drive because they were damaged. And I would have employees that couldn't even get to my clients' homes because their cars would break down. Or in the 110 degree weather that we have down here, they would have cars with no aircon. They'd get there and they'd be completely covered in sweat. So I basically just went to the nearest dealership and I said, let me buy a Hummer, an H3, give me the cheapest ones you've got, just, bare bones model. and there were 2 white ones available. Took them to my office, and I said, hey, that tire in the back, I can put my logo back there. So I did that, wrapped the Hummers. And a week later, I get hired in Mercedes. There was an explosion. And by then, I was already doing some TV ads, like maybe a month before. And all the TV crews show up, and they're interviewing me about this case that I got. It was basically the top news for about 2 weeks. And the Hummers were always in the background. And so I became like the Hummer lawyer.
Yeah.
And then the movie Transformer came out. There was a Hummer in the first Transformer. My 7-year-old says, Dad, why doesn't our Hummer transform? And I'm like, well, why doesn't it? Let's make it transform.
Good idea.
And so then a year later, my Hummers were transforming. But notice it was not some epiphany like, I'm going to get these Hummers and wrap them and then this and then I'm going to the evolution of these things never happened that way. It's always a lot, just mere coincidence.
Yeah.
But always wanted to do better. Like everything is driven by good intentions. When I started doing TV, it wasn't because I wanted to be on TV. I was asked to go to Career Day in Sullivan City, and I show up, and it's a bunch of little third graders, tiny little third graders. And I said, my name is Jesse Gonzalez, and I'm a lawyer. And one of the little girls there says, well, what's a lawyer? And then the little boy in the back of the room raises his hand and says, I know what a lawyer is. And I'm like, okay, well, tell us what a lawyer is. Brian Longcar.
Wow.
And so that really struck me. I didn't go there to get an education on marketing 101.
Yeah.
I went there to serve my community. I went there with good intentions to talk to kids about, being a lawyer and Career Day and staying away from drugs and education and the importance of education and doing your homework and learning how to read and write. I mean, that's it. I didn't say, let me go to Sullivan City so that I can become the next Brian Longcar, because I'm going to learn, because that's where I'm going to get this eureka moment. So everything that I've always done has always come from good intentions, and they've come from a good place. So I left there, I get in my car, and I call Channel 5, Channel 4, Channel 23, Univision, Telemundo, and I said, meet me in my office in 30 minutes. And they get there, and they're like, what's up? I said, I just came from Sullivan City, and there's a third grader that basically associates lawyer with Longcar, and he was a recent immigrant. He hasn't even lived here very long. For heaven's sakes, he's only a third grader. Yet he knows the Longcar name. Mm-hmm. Longcar isn't even from here. He's from Dallas. And I go, I'm from here. I taught at La Jolla for 7 years. This kid doesn't even know anything about me. What's the difference? He's on TV, I'm not. So put me on TV. That happened about 15 years ago. And obviously, things have changed drastically for me since then, because we have been doing a lot of marketing on TV. And we have essentially done it in a way that's very unique.
Yeah.
And that's hard to emulate and copy, which was part of the inspiration for
the commercial,
our Super Bowl commercial. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun to take a job that's very serious. I was joking with my wife last night. We were having dinner, and I had a couple that walked up to us and said, hey, we saw your commercial. We love your commercial. And I said, yeah, I'm a lawyer that played an actor on TV. And, and that's a reference to somebody saying, I'm an actor that plays a doctor on TV, right? And it's kind of ironic and interesting how it's, with me, it's the inverse, right? I played an actor on TV, but I'm actually a lawyer. And so they all laugh because, it's interesting how that dynamic was reversed. But we try to have a lot of fun with these projects. And that Top Lawyer commercial certainly was a lot of fun. It was very difficult. We had like 7-8 days that we shot in multiple locations.
Yeah, where did you shoot those?
We went to Corpus. We actually went on an actual aircraft carrier. The F-16 was the actual jet that was used in the movie Top Gun.
Nice.
So it was the actual one. And there was an elevator scene in the commercial where I'm basically being lifted on the elevator. That was fun, and we kind of took that idea from the actual trailer in the Maverick movie, where they show him or the planes going up. So yeah, we went to Corpus, we went to the beach, we went to Harlingen, to the airport hangar there, where there was a hangar scene, and then we did some footage. We did some filming in Brownsville.
Okay.
Sorry, at the island.
Okay.
The Hummer scene with the sand blowing.
Yeah.
It was super cold. It was like 45 degrees outside. The wind was blowing really, really hard. And, the director of the commercial said, look, in the movie Top Gun, there's a scene where Maverick and Ice and all those dudes, they're playing volleyball without a shirt. And they're out there high-fiving and having a good time. And I need for you to do that.
That was the inspiration for that shot.
Yeah. And I said, yeah, but it wasn't 50 degrees, 7 a.m, because he's like, look, we got to have the sun at the right spot, and it's got to be early. 45 degrees. I take my shirt off. I got my shades on. My son, who's 18, was the person that I high-fived. And it was excruciating because, when my son was high-fiving me, he was high-fiving me. I mean, he was really like smacking and, 45 degrees, 7 a.m, and you're getting like slapped on the hand. And I'm like, and we had to do several takes. No, do it again. You didn't really high-five enough. Okay, let's do it again. And I'm like, God, and again and again and again. And so... that happened. The wind was blowing really, really hard. And as it turns out, a lot of times you want to create special effects when you have these movies or commercials. There's a scene on the aircraft carrier where we've got literally like 5 or 6 people with fogging machines, spray cans, like creating mist.
Yeah, the mist.
And I'm walking towards the jet, and you've got all these people just, and so when you see that scene, I'm walking with my bomber jacket towards his jet, and you see this kind of smoke coming out. It's just a bunch of people with spray cans, just literally doing this, which is kind of comical. But, to try to channel the whole spirit of the movie, we had these speakers blaring the Top Gun anthem in the background, with the guitar and the music. And so like, let's set the stage. Let's bring in that spirit. Let's bring in that whole vibe. And so if you kind of felt like it was that vibe, that was the energy that we try to channel. And coincidentally, when I'm walking down the street with the McAllen building behind me, which is something that we did like 7 years ago.
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
So when I did that scene 7-8 years ago where I'm walking with just a black t-shirt, it was just me walking. It was kind of warm. I was lifting a lot of weights at the time, and I'm like, I just felt good. And I was 7 years younger too. And so when I did the same scene with a suit now and a tie, I'm like, man, how do I channel that energy of that man that was younger?
Yeah.
I go, you know what? Bring those speakers out here and put some Staying Alive.
Nice.
Put some of that John Travolta Staying Alive music. And so there I was, Staying Alive. And I'm just walking down. So, those are a lot of the behind the scene things that are happening.
That nobody ever gets to hear.
No, you just see the final product and you think, okay. And then there were so many issues. My Hummer broke down. And then it broke down again. And then finally I said, I need it because this is the last day that we have to shoot. And it's like, well, take it, but it can't leave McAllen because he won't make it anywhere else. Well, I had to take it to the beach because McAllen didn't work because it was overcast and it started to rain.
Geez.
So then it's like, you know what? Let's go to South Padre Island. And so I couldn't turn it off. And then the director or producer's like, why don't you turn your Hummer off? I go, because if I turned it off, it's not going to turn on. And then my wife tells me, because she went up there, my kids went up there too. It's like, why do we have to take an extra vehicle? I go, because the Hummer may not make it. She goes, okay, we'll follow you. So, and then one of the hangars that we were supposed to use in Brownsville, they canceled the day of. So we had to find another hangar. We get to the new hangar, and there's a scene with a motorcycle where, I ride out of the hangar, and I literally ride out to where the planes are landing and taking off.
Yeah.
And the security picked up on that. Who's this crazy guy in a black ninja going down the where the planes are landing and taking off? So you have all these cops just rush over to the hangar. It's like, who's this psycho on a bike, trying to race jets? And we're like, hey, we've got the hangar. We're here.
Might as well get the shot.
Here's our permit. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. And so, that happened to add a little drama to the whole thing. And when we're there, it wasn't even planned. We saw the Iwo Jima, memorial, the lifting of the American flag. And Enrique says, man, that's really cool. We should pay homage to the veterans and have that shot of you riding up in your motorcycle, with the American flag and the soldiers lifting that flag. And so, again, that wasn't even planned. Wow. But because we were in Harlingen and not Brownsville, we were able to see that and we were able to ad lib and kind of add that in there. And it turned out to be a very, very cool scene.
Interesting.
There's a scene where I'm taking the cover off of the bike, and I thought, what is that? What's the purpose of that, deal? And then it dawned on me, I go, you know what? Growing up, I used to love watching those bullfighters, where they're doing that deal with the bull and all that. And I go, it's the only thing that I can associate that, it just kind of looks cool. It's kind of like paying homage to maybe that kind of motion. But, so yeah, no, we had a lot of fun with that. And, again, we threw in the Corvette, and that was kind of fun having it in there. And, it's just different because we didn't even talk about, hey, if you're in an accident, call me.
Yeah. That's what I love about, but this is what I love about the world we live in. The internet has literally leveled the playing field. So not selling what you're selling in your commercials or your advertising and building that brand over time, people just come back to you. You don't have to sell them anything. And this is one of the things I always preach is education, information, and entertainment. And you hit them all, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing is if you do it long enough times, you stay in front of people's face long enough, they'll eventually come to you. And that's what I love about yours is because you're so aggressive about your advertising and marketing. And that's what I always try to push is people is be aggressive. Yeah. And the great thing about it is 90% of people won't do it. 90% of people won't jump in front of a camera. 90% of people won't speak in front of a camera. They just don't have it in them, I guess.
I got to tell you, it's tough if you're not used to it.
Yeah.
It's extremely tough if you're shy. And, when I started doing it 15 years ago, I was incredibly uncomfortable. I was just so uncomfortable. And we didn't have smartphone technology back then. We didn't have Facebook Live or Instagram or any of these things. And so getting in front of a camera and talking and being recorded and it's going to be on TV where people can see, that can be nerve-wracking. And, people say that one of the most difficult things to do is to be a public speaker. Well, be a public speaker and then have it put on TV for hundreds of thousands of people to see over a course of time. Yeah. That can kind of get to your head when the red light turns on and they say, okay, talk now. And that's why a lot of people say, no, it's not for me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it. And so, I had to make that transition because, again, we're in a field that's very, very competitive. It's hyper competitive. It's ultra competitive. The other day I found out through one of my competitors' agencies that people are paying $1,000 on Google for J. Gonzalez, meaning if you type J. Gonzalez, you're looking for me as a lawyer. Competitors are bidding.
They're trying to hijack your traffic.
They're bidding $1,000 so that their ad appears. Before my organic,
interesting,
website. $1,000 per click. That's just a click.
Yeah.
You click and you say, well, I don't want to hire this guy.
Yeah, if it's not a qualified lead.
Google already got $1,000.
Yep.
to be willing to pay that much money and say, I don't care if it goes poof and I get nothing from it. That's how hyper competitive this industry is. It's not like you're going to spend $5.
Yeah.
No, you're spending
not anymore.
You're spending a ton of money, and it used to be $5.
Yeah.
You know,
it used to be.
That was like the thing to do, and nobody knew about it. And if they did, the technology wasn't there to really support it.
Yeah.
No smartphones and very slow internet and all that. But you know, right now it's a part of what we do because. And I always equate things to the military and to, going to war. I mean, you've got to have your infantry. You've got to have your Air Force. You've got to have your Navy. You've got to have your cavalry. You've got to have, your archers.
Yeah.
In other words, how many, toys do you have in your arsenal, in your toolbox to kind of do everything you have to? And so in marketing, you have radio, TV, you have social media, you have billboards, and so whatever, you want to call the billboards your archers, have the archers do what they got to do, right? You want to call the infantry what you do on TV, okay, that's your infantry. Social media, maybe those are my special ops, right?
Yeah.
But to me, I always equate everything that I do marketing-wise with again, warfare.
Yeah.
And when you think of it that way, and you think about deploying troops, well, where do you have your castles? Where do you have your compounds? And if you look at my offices, they're very strategically placed. Rio Grande, McAllen, Westlaco, very soon in Harlingen, and Brownsville. I can deploy troops and be there, boom, there. Yeah. And we're not talking about war, right? We're talking about impressions now. Yeah. How many people are seeing your signs,
how many times your face, your name comes up.
Yeah, top of mind awareness. Yeah. And it's the warfare of being the person that people are going to remember, the person that people are going to want to call. And look, you can have all these fancy gadgets and fancy toys, and you can have all these amazing things. Remember, the Nazis had a lot of cool toys, but they weren't coming from a good place. Yeah. And if you're not doing the good things with what you have, well, how long is that going to last?
Right.
It's not, right? So you've got to have all these cool toys and weapons, as I'm calling them, but gadgets and things in your toolbox and your arsenal. But you've got to come from a good place. You've got to do the right thing. You've got to deliver on your promises. And you've got to basically back it up.
Yeah.
You can't just talk the talk and not walk the walk.
Yeah.
And walking the walk is where a lot of competitors fail. Because you can say whatever you have to say, but are you backing it up?
Right.
And again, it's a science and an art form. It's a combination of all of that. And putting all of that together administratively, it's a daunting task. And it's not for anybody.
Yeah. Well, at the level you're doing it at is quite amazing, because I know Mauricio. Mauricio is probably one of the best guys that I know that does what he does. And I've known him for years. My thing was coming from the digital world is like, billboards don't work. Billboards don't work. This doesn't work. TV's overpriced. But honestly, what you're doing is you have an omni-channel presence, which is getting every single person to see your face, your name, and you're in front of everybody.
Yeah,
that's the great thing that I love. The people that can do that stuff are going to last the long term.
Yeah, and look, Josh, I'm doing something here today that I've never done before.
Yeah.
I've done pretty much everything in terms of marketing that you can think of, but I've never done a podcast. So when I was told Josh wants to invite you and have you do a podcast, I'm like, I've never done a podcast. So let's go. And my wife is like, honey, you've been working a lot. You need to just take it easy. Call Josh. Tell him that you're going to reschedule. I said, I did that already last week because I couldn't make it to his podcast. I go, I don't want to do that 2 weeks in a row. I mean, again, there's got to be a level of professionalism. And so in spite of the fact that I wasn't feeling it today, you got to punch in.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. I mean, a lot of times people just don't want to punch in. And I'm glad, like you said, a lot of people don't want to step up to the plate. and that's a good thing for those of us that do.
Yeah. No, I completely agree because I've seen it in my industry. You'll see a lot of people talk and talk and talk, and they can't back it up. And then when it comes down to it, they just can't deliver. And that's what I love about it, because I'm fair game. Anybody that wants to come into the marketing and advertising game, I'm good. Like, go for it. Show us what you got. But you'll always see them drop out. Eventually, they just drop out. And the ones that are consistent and persistent and keep going, even when they don't want to. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've made content that I don't feel it that day, but I do it anyways, and I show up week after week, chip away, chip away, chip away. I think that's what makes people special.
And Josh, I don't care what industry you're in, what profession you're in. When I was a teacher, the teacher that I admired the most, his name was Joe Mancias. His name is Joe Mancias. He was a grinder, day in and day out. There was no bad day. He punched in and he worked. He was a machine. He had a motor on him. And he only had one speed, and it was go. 100 miles an hour every day. And kids that were in his classroom were blessed because they had Joe Mancia as a teacher. And I mean, if you're a lawyer and you're doing that every day, you're grinding, you're working, you're pushing, you're going to have happier clients. Yeah. If you're doing what you're doing, generating content, and content is king on the internet, right? I mean, you're going to basically reap those rewards, but you really can't take the pedal off the gas.
No, you can't. Is there such a thing as work-life balance?
There has to be. And my wife and I have gone into this discussion many times because she's like, honey, you've got such a great brand. Do immigration. I mean, you'd be so good at it. And right now, I mean, there's a need that needs to be filled. And I'm very quick to remind her, you complain that I work too much. And that's because I'm focusing in one area. Personal injury. I'm not like a lawyer that does personal injury, criminal, family law, bankruptcy, I'm doing one sector of a field, right? In the legal field. I said, if I were to do immigration, I mean, wow. I mean, we've got 24 hours in the day, and then there's a night, and I wouldn't have enough time. And so the way that I balance, and you learn this, I learned this as a teacher. Sometimes less can be more. You just have to figure, what's a priority, what's important, what must be done, meaning there's no maybe I'll do it. No. What must be done, know what that is, do those all the time. And then a lot of the stuff is just noise. A lot of the stuff is just, extraneous stuff that doesn't really add value to what you do. And knowing how to do that, knowing what to say, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to bother with this, that allows you to have that balance.
Are you filtering out the...
Yes. Yeah. It's the person that wants to do everything, micromanage, cannot delegate. Even Moses was going crazy in the desert when he didn't want to delegate. And it was not until he said, you know what, I think I need to delegate. And then things started to fall into place for him, right? But it's the people that don't want to delegate that find themselves in trouble. Mm-hmm. I mean, you've got to find a way to duplicate what you do by hiring good people. And you mentioned Mauricio earlier today. I'm so incredibly happy that Mauricio didn't give up on trying to form a partnership with me 10 years ago because I told him no. Mauricio was the colonel from KFC that was told no, like I don't know how many times, and he never gave up. And eventually KFC was born. Mauricio came to me at least half a dozen times or more saying, let me help you with your digital. And I would tell him no. And, part of the problem with me telling him no is that Mauricio's very good at what he does, but he's not really a good marketing person. Sales are not his thing. Yeah. But eventually I got tired of him bothering me and not giving up.
You wore you down.
That I basically decided I'm going to have fun with this guy. And I said, you know what I'm going to do? I go, I'm going to say yes to you, and you have 3 months to prove me wrong. And I know you're going to be wrong. And I just want to know that I was right and that you were wrong. And I'm going to be real happy about that. So here's your check for 3 months. And in 3 months, we're going to meet right here. And I'm just going to basically just love the fact that I'm going to say, I told you so. And then we're done. And then he's like, deal. And 10 years later, he's still doing my digital advertising.
I think that mindset of, because I have that too, when people tell me that you cannot do it, you will not be able to do this, like it triggers something to me. Is like, no, I'm going to prove you wrong. I think that there's always that, like when somebody says you can't do it and they just shut down. Yeah. Or the other side of that where they go after is like, no, I'm going to prove you wrong. That's what I love about this world. There's so many different people that everybody it clicks in them differently. And that's what I love about it. Let's talk about the pandemic.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
I think it was obviously one of the worst times here in the Rio Grande Valley around the United States. A lot of people lost work. A lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people lost family members. What do you say to these people to keep a positive message? Because it's very easy to fall down that rabbit hole of negativity. What do you say to these people to keep a positive mindset, even when they've lost everything?
You know, I myself was impacted by COVID-19. My entire family got it. And I ended up in the hospital, almost died, had double pneumonia. My heart almost came to a stop. My heart rate was at 40 for like 2 hours. Wow. And they couldn't get it to go back to normal. And at the end of the day, it was just oxygen, what it was. But, you know, when I got out of the hospital, one of the things, well, when I was in the hospital, I'm a spiritual person, not religious by any means, meaning, you know, you're not going to find me at church on Wednesday and on Saturday and on Sunday. But I do pray, and I am spiritual, and I do believe in God. And when I was in the hospital and I knew that the doctors were very concerned, they're like, hey, dude, we're going to have to put you on remdesivir because all the drugs that we've been giving you, you're still trending in the wrong direction. The blood thinners that we gave you 2 days ago, instead of thinning your blood's getting thicker. So you're on the verge of getting a heart attack, a stroke, or you might have kidney failure any moment. And so we have to double the dose of of your blood thinners. But the problem with now doubling your dose is you had a brain hemorrhage 5 years ago. You may hemorrhage to death.
Wow.
Because we're thinning your blood too much. I mean, keep in mind, Josh, that I was told by my neurosurgeon 5 years ago, whatever you do not take Advil or ibuprofen. And so, you know, basically I'm like, why? Well, because it's going to thin your blood and you might die. So imagine not being able to do that, but now you're getting hardcore blood thinners.
Yeah, that's insane.
Exactly. So, fortunately it worked. The blood thinners started working, but more importantly, I was able to bounce back because I did get remdesivir. They happened to have one dose.
Wow.
They had one dose of remdesivir and that helped.
So what was the first thing that you did when you got out of the hospital then? I mean, obviously it was a super traumatic experience. Your family was watching everything. What do you think?
Well, it was traumatic because as you know, with COVID, you cannot have visitors.
Yeah.
And you want to be able to have that. You want to be able to have that companionship.
Yeah.
You want to have that support. And so unfortunately we didn't have that. Nobody does during this time. And so that can be incredibly tough. That can be incredibly tough when it comes to you wanting to have that support. Yeah. But ultimately, when I was in the hospital struggling and with the double pneumonia and all that, and just it got to the point where I'm like, okay, well, Nothing seems to be working. All these doctors are doing what they can. Before I even came to the hospital, I did what I could to self-medicate, did all the things that you'd hear on social media. Nothing seemed to work. And I basically, at that point, just resigned myself to the fact, like, you know what? I don't have control over this. I mean, how stupid of me to think that I actually can dictate, my destiny in terms of life or death. And at that point, I said, all right, God, I give up. This is your gig, not mine. And if it's your choice to take me, then take me. And if that's going to help save lives, then use me for that purpose, and I'm ready. I go, if you feel like I have a higher purpose to serve, the Rio Grande Valley, Texas, the community here, then show me the way, give me a sign, give me that inspiration, be that voice, and use me for that too. Either way, it's your choice. I'm here. I'm good either way. I wasn't there begging for him to save my life.
Yeah.
Because again, I don't know what his plans are for me. I don't know. We have such a limited perspective on things. And sometimes hindsight being 2020, we can look back 20 years, and say, oh, that's why that happened. Wow. And I wanted that so bad and it didn't happen. And now I know that I'm so glad that it didn't happen. I mentioned earlier about wanting to become a principal.
Yeah.
I become a principal. I'm not a lawyer. Oh. There is no J. Gonzalez law firm. There is no 1-800 car crash. There is no transformer. There is no top. We're not having this conversation.
Right.
Now, maybe I become one of those principals that's featured in a movie about, taking a school that's in danger, and all of a sudden all these kids are like superstars. Okay, I don't know. But at the end, sometimes God doesn't give us what we want because he's got other plans for us, and you just got to find what that is. You got to find that calling. You got to be able to tap into that calling. Yeah. And when I left the hospital, because that's how this conversation started, you said, well, what happened? Well, what ended up happening was I discovered that there was a lot of myths going around, a lot of misinformation. As you know, Josh, it was a political year, and you got on the internet, and it's like, okay, the Republicans are saying that this is a hoax. The Democrats are saying that this is the end of the world. Well, who's right? Who's wrong? Well, what are the scientists saying? Well, the scientists are saying that this is going to kill you. Well, now they're saying that it's not. Well, it's like, well, even the scientists can't agree. So politicians had our heads spinning. Hollywood had our heads spinning. The media, you go to CNN, they're saying one thing. You go to Fox, they're saying another thing. Who's telling the truth, right?
Well, let me ask you this. So the world we live in, social media, obviously everybody has an opinion about something. Do you think that's a good thing, or do you think it's a bad thing?
I think that's a great thing. The problem, Josh, and I was having a conversation with Rock and Roll James about this, who has a voice? Yeah. Because we also found out that people that had a voice were silenced if Big Brother didn't agree with you.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so if you silence a certain section of people, well, what if they're saying the truth?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so when I went to the hospital, it was very shocking to me to hear not one doctor, several doctors tell me, Jesse, all the stuff that we're going to do for you, like the remdesivir and the plasma and all this stuff, you're about a week too late.
Wow.
Now, I was 13 days into being infected with COVID-19. And I couldn't be upset at the doctor, but then everything in my head started playing back. Hearing the so-called experts on TV say, if you get it, don't go to the hospital. Don't even go to the doctor. Just stay home, quarantine, self-medicate, take your Tylenol. Don't be bothering medical professionals because you're going to clog the hospitals. Yeah. You're going to slow everything down. And the people that really need help are not going to get it because you're bothering them. And I thought, you basically are telling me that 5 days into me knowing I was infected, I should have come to the hospital. Yet everything you hear on social media, the news saying, don't bother the hospitals.
Yeah.
And I thought, because I've been saying, I go, this doesn't make sense to me. When it comes to stroke, Josh, what do they say? Early detection is the key.
Yeah.
You want to save your life. Heart attack, early detection is the key. Cancer, early detection is the key. When they started preaching that message, the death rate started to go down because early detection was the key. Yet with COVID, early detection, stay home.
Yeah.
Don't bother us until you're about to die. Then you get there, like me, and you're told straight up to your face, you're about a week too late.
Wow.
It's like, dude, all of you experts are saying to stay home until I'm this sick. Now I'm this sick and you're telling me it's too late. So that was one doctor. Another doctor comes in. Yeah, all this stuff. I mean, the virus has already done its damage. What we're giving you is, it's too late.
Wow.
We're still going to do it.
Yeah.
But you should have been here a week ago. So I was pissed because I'm thinking my community here in the Valley, they're not hearing this. They're not being told what these doctors in the COVID units telling me. I may not come out of here, and I'm not even going to be a martyr because no one's going to hear me say, call out all these people. When you die a martyr's death, it's because your message resonates, it gets heard, and your life serves a purpose.
Right.
But, and I learned this in World War II, and the Chinese are famous for doing this even now. If you disappear and you've never had a voice, well then you're not even a martyr.
You don't exist.
You just died and you disappeared and you're gone. Now what purpose does your life serve, right? So when I got out of the hospital, after being told by several doctors, yeah, you should have been here earlier, I called all the TV stations and I didn't say, hey man, I've been sick for a month. I need to get on TV. That wasn't what that inner voice that was guiding me was telling me. It's like, call all the TV stations, get in front of a camera, and talk to your people across the Rio Grande Valley and tell them what you've learned from your experience. And so what I basically said from August through October, I had 1 minute on CNN, I had 1 minute on Fox, and I used those minutes in a political year.
Yeah.
Think about this, Josh. Political year, August, September, October, leading up to the actual election. Yeah. What was I doing with that minute? I was talking to people about don't wait. Don't self-medicate. You get this shit. You get this. Be careful because you might die of a heart attack, a stroke, kidney failure. Do you know what your blood, they call it the D-dimer. Do you know how thick your blood is? Are you in danger of dying of something else? My oxygen levels were fine, according to me, because I'm in good health. Yeah. I get on the Stairmaster for 45 minutes, level 12, and I'm doing cartwheels, not a problem. Most people can't even do 5 minutes on level 2. And so when I went to the hospital, it wasn't because I couldn't breathe. I went because my buddy who was in the hospital at the time, a doctor, he knew that I had 104.5, 104.3 fever the night before. And he called me the next morning and he said, how do you feel? I go, I'm just tired, dude. Well, can you breathe? I go, oh, yeah, I'm fine. And my wife and I joke about this because we have a house that's like, 8,000 square feet. And if we go from our bedroom to the kitchen, you literally you're walking a mile and it's a workout. Yeah. So to be able to make that walk and not be winded, you hear stories. You were hearing a lot of stories back then that you couldn't go from your bed to the restroom without getting winded. Wow. Well, I was going from my bed to my kitchen, no problem. So he's like, so how are your oxygen levels? I'm like, they're fine. I'm not struggling breathing. He goes, look, man, just come in. Just come in. Let me just run some tests. I'll have you home in 30 minutes. We've got time right now. We haven't had space in a while. We happen to have space right now. I show up fully expecting to go home, literally in 30 minutes. I told my son, wait for me outside. He took me and I'll be out in a second. And he goes, dude, your blood's so freaking thick that, you know, you're in danger of having heart failure, kidney failure, all that. Your oxygen levels there at 70. So they need to be at 93, 95. So your oxygen levels are way low.
Wow.
What else did he say? Your lungs are showing signs of infection. You still don't have you still don't have pneumonia, but you're showing signs of infection. He's like, look, man, I'll have you home tomorrow. Just stay here. We're going to give you some intravenous, you know, steroids. We're going to inject you with this, you know, blood thinners. And tomorrow you'll be home with your family. Stay. I go, sure. Keep me here for one night. And all of a sudden the next day came. They're like, no, we're going to decide to keep you 2.
Wow.
Because we want to see if the medication's working. I'm like, fine, 2. And those COVID units in the summer, just so you know, they're very, very hot because to keep the employees safe, they've got to get all the air out. All the air out. Well, if they're getting all the air out and they have to bring
fresh air
in, what fresh air are they bringing? The 110-degree fresh air of the Rio Grande
Valley weather.
Which, incidentally, I will never, ever complain about again after last week. I gave our weather a proverbial big hug. I apologized, got on my knees and said, I am so sorry, Rio Grande Valley weather, for always complaining about you all my life. I will never complain about your heat and humidity ever again after last week. And I know that you want to talk about that later. But so I got out and my message was simple. Get help quickly. Don't self-medicate because you may be too late, because people were dying because they were 1 or 2 or 3 days late. And I almost got there and I just happened to get through. The other message was, well, how did I get this virus? You know, I never ever got sick. And yet I spent 2.5 months in New York City when it was happening.
Wow.
Believe it or not, I was in New York City February, March, June.
Like ground zero.
Think about it. That was worse than Wuhan, right? And I never got it. Airports. I was in airports. So how did it get me? And so in Fox, I had 2 minutes. Univision, I had 2 minutes. So I took those 2 minutes, English and Spanish, and I said, get in here. I'm going to do a 2-minute segment, English and Spanish, and I'm going to tell people, this is how I got it. Be careful. My sister-in-law had a job, was exposed. She's 18 years old. She didn't think anything of it. Had some allergies. Went to a doctor, and the doctor's like, you're fine.
Wow. Doesn't
even test her for COVID. And this is in July. This is in late June, early July. Actually, it was late June. It was before 4th of July. So, you know, maybe 28th, 29th of June. So my sister-in-law helps us with our kids. And she's very close with my mother-in-law. They live with us. Okay? You know, we're typical Mexican family, man. My suegra's there. My sister-in-law's there. My kids are
family.
there. I mean, we're all a big village there, and I love it. And so my suegra and my sister-in-law, they're taking care of my 2-year-old and 6-year-old. All of a sudden, they get a fever. And my suegra's like, well, last week, I kind of had a fever, but I didn't think anything of it because nothing happened to me. And yeah, Monse, she had a fever, went to the doctor, told her she was fine, and she's fine. I go, well, our kids have a fever. They don't even step outside the house. Okay, you know what? We're all going to get tested. Sure enough, we all had COVID.
Wow.
And they already had antibodies, which means they had it for at least a week or 2.
Wow.
So what do you do when you go home? You put your guard down. You're not at the airport. You're at home. You take the mask off, right? Why are you having to wash your hands if you're at home? Why do you have to social distance if you're at home? So a lot of the precautions that you're told to take, you go home and you're like, I'm safe. And the message for those 2 minutes was, you're not safe. You've got to be very, very vigilant and very, very careful, because if there's no communication with your significant others about what they're feeling, how they're feeling, and if they're not quarantining within themselves when they have these allergy-like symptoms or colds or whatever, slight fevers, then you're just exposing yourself to the virus that almost killed me.
Yeah.
And so for 3 months, Josh, here I am, Mr. 1-800 car crash. And I have 2 minutes on Univision and Fox, 1 minute on Fox News and CNN. And it's all COVID. It's all COVID public service announcements. The problem is that they weren't free. I was paying to get the message out. And when it was all said and done, I looked back and I thought, that was my role.
Yeah.
That's why God saved me. He wanted me to get out and do that. Who else had a bigger platform than me?
Yeah.
Who else had 2 minutes on Fox? Who else had 2 minutes on Univision twice a week? Who else had a minute on CNN and on Fox News in a political season? I got on social media like I'm doing now, talked about it, had an interview with El Tejano, had an interview with The Monitor, had an interview with a podcast, not a podcast. He does some stuff on YouTube, Rock and Roll James. So it was basically, let me just get the word out about some of the misinformation, some of the myths, some of the stuff that's out there that's just political garbage. And let's just focus on the facts, which, during COVID, when it happened, I decided to form a partnership with a lot of local news organizations. And I supported local journalism because I felt like they were keeping it real. It wasn't garbage. It was real news. And so we did public service announcements with Lamar. So if you saw billboards that said public service, and if you saw COVID-19 stuff on billboards with Jay Gonzalez law firm next to it, that was me calling Lamar saying, you all have all these billboards all over the valley, put them to good use. Yeah. Put some news up there that can inform and educate the Rio Grande Valley. And Lamar, to their credit, said, you know what? We will do this. We will do this for you. And they did. So a lot of public service announcements were done because of COVID. And, I was happy to help. Yeah. I was happy to help. It wasn't about business. It wasn't about driving our numbers. It wasn't about wanting to get clients. It was just, how can I help the valley
and give back
and give back? And so I was happy to do that.
Yeah, I think people think that we're out of the woods already. Like that's it. COVID's over. What do you say about that?
No, not at all. Not at all. I went to a doctor today to get a vitamin C infusion. I mean, I don't know if you've heard of infusion therapy where you get vitamins intravenously. Yes, because if you pop them through your stomach, they're not as effective as if they go straight through the vein. And she said, sorry that the normal nurse that does this is not here, but she just got infected with COVID and she's out for 2 weeks. And she's Asian, this doctor is. And she goes, we're not out of the woods yet. I mean, this is still a serious thing that needs to be taken seriously. And so, I mean, we still take the precautions that we have to take. We still try to be as careful as possible. I walked in here and I said, Josh, I've been vaccinated. I've had COVID. You're safe with me. I'm asymptomatic. I've got no fever. So I'm not wearing my mask right now. But yeah, I mean, we shouldn't take our guard down. I've heard that herd immunity isn't reached until 75-80% of the people are vaccinated. We're hearing reports from Israel that Israel cut a deal with Pfizer, I believe, where they said, hey, come and vaccinate all of us for free, and we'll give you all the data you want.
Wow,
all the data you want. And Israel has reached that herd immunity, and they have seen incredible success with their infection rates dramatically dropping, their death rates dramatically dropping. It basically is working. And the data's coming out, and what they're finding out, interestingly enough, is that for those of you that got the first shot already but failed to get it within that 4-week period that they were saying that you should get it in, it's not a 4-week period, it's a 12-week period.
Huh, okay.
That's what the studies from Israel are showing. That if you do it within 12 weeks, you're still within the window of getting the therapeutic effect that you want.
Interesting.
From being able to get this virus.
Interesting. Before we finish off the podcast, we have to talk about last week. Okay. I saw a meme that said, who can go from -1 to 70 degrees? And Texas is like, hold my beer. What do you... I don't even know what to say about last week.
Well, I had someone send me a meme that said 2020 was a year from hell, and 2021 is the year where hell froze over. And I laughed about that, and I said, yeah, just wait for the alien invasion, right? Because there were people were talking about that too. It's like, that's all we need right now.
That's all we need.
That's all we freaking need. But I mean, look, everybody was caught off guard. And one of the things that disappointed me, Josh, more than anything, is that, as Texans, we're so proud. I can go anywhere in the world, and I have. I've been to Africa, China, South America, Europe. Eastern Europe, you name it. I've been there. And when people ask me, where are you from? I don't say the United States. I say Texas.
Yeah.
And every single person, no matter where I go in the world, I could be in the remote jungles of the Amazon.
They know Texas.
I could be in the Galapagos. I could be in Machu Picchu. I could be in Beijing. I'm not even making this up. I could be in New Zealand, Australia. I'm telling you, it's like a little test that I did. I would say Texas. Nobody said, where is that?
Yeah.
Everybody in the world knows Texas. And usually the comment that followed that comment was, where are your boots? Where's your hat? And, when I would travel, I wouldn't take my boots. You take comfortable shoes and you don't take a Western hat. Like, you don't want to look like you're not from there.
Yeah.
You want to blend in.
You're going to blend in.
So yeah, I'm an incredibly proud Texan, and I'm just so disappointed that Texas and our leadership and the companies in charge failed us, because look, I'm 52 years old and I have no shame in admitting my age. And I can recall vividly that there has been times 20, 30 years ago where literally we would have hard freezes like this, extreme drops in temperature like this. And they would last 2-3 days. Dude, we lost power the day of. Like, temperatures dropped, and then all of a sudden everybody loses power. The day of.
It's crazy.
The day of.
Yeah.
And it's like, are we more primitive 30 years later than we were 30 years ago, that now we can handle a cold front that comes in that we've had many, 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 many years?
Yeah.
And to me, it's an embarrassment. Heads already rolled, I understand, from some of the electric grid. And
resigned.
Understandably so, because it's just shameful to have a state like Texas with Dallas, Houston, Austin,
biggest cities,
San Antonio. And the Valley now with 1.3 million people. I call the Valley just a big city, and that's what we are. But to fail so many people, and think about it, we needed electricity. It's 20 degrees outside, and people don't have the means to keep themselves warm. It's just ridiculous. Yep. So it was just a bad thing. And look, here's what I have to say about that in terms of from a business perspective. We weren't relevant as a business, and by that I mean this. When people can't leave their homes or don't want to leave their homes, they're being told don't drive because there's ice on the roads. Yeah. People aren't going to be getting into accidents. You need traffic to have accidents, and then there might have a need for your services, right? Yeah. So there was no need for personal injury lawyers during that time. My lights weren't working in the office anyway. Our phones were down. I could have just basically said, all right, I'm out. Let me just pack my bags and go to Cancun with my family where there's nice warm weather.
Cruise away.
Yeah, let me brave the tough, nasty parts of Cancun, right? Take my family and save them. I could have done that.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting with my wife at our kitchen, and we had electricity. We were one of the few fortunate ones that didn't lose power. And she's got a huge heart, and she says, honey, we got to do something. I'm like, well, what do you suggest? People without light, people without water. I mean, they don't have warm meals. We need to basically do something to help with providing food. And I said, well, where do we start? She goes, let's call some restaurants. Let's call some people to see if they want to partner up with us to see if we can raise money, get restaurants, and let's not just do it in McAllen. Let's do Brownsville, Weslaco. Let's do McAllen. Let's do Rio Grande City. And she picked up her phone. She started working feverishly. Then she got me, it was infectious because then her enthusiasm got me going. Then I started making some phone calls. Before we know it, it's 2 a.m. and we got to get up at 6 a.m. to get everything ready. And she couldn't sleep all night. She got up at 3. And all day from 7 a.m. till like 9 o'clock at night, we went from Brownsville, Weslaco, McAllen, Rio Grande City. We finished in Rio Grande City. And we fed, I don't know, maybe 2,000 people awesome. with warm meals. And I mentioned that story to anybody out there that owns a business because I was not relevant as a personal injury lawyer, but what I did was relevant. Yeah. And when you own a business, you've got to find ways of being relevant in your community when you're not.
Absolutely.
And again, with COVID, it wasn't about getting cases. It was about educating the public, informing the public, providing that public service. With the freeze, it was about what can I do to help. At the end of the day, your phones are not always going to ring. You're not always going to be there to do what you were meant to do. But then you've got to figure out a way, where's the need? Can I fill that need? And a lot of times you don't do things like that because you want to have all the answers. Logistically, you want to have everything figured out. And then before you know it, it becomes paralysis by analysis. And you're like, you know what? It's too much. Yeah. And you overwhelm yourself. And you say, what was I thinking? Never mind. Next. But, one of the things that's been very helpful to my business, not just with what we've done helping the community, but we don't try to have all the answers. We don't have to try to have everything figured out. We know it ain't going to be perfect. And we had people that complained like, I had to wait 30 minutes for my food and I can't believe it. And you only gave me 1 plate. I wanted 10 plates. And you're going to have things like that happen, but you can't let people that are going to complain or that are going to criticize stop you from doing good deeds simply because you're not going to be perfect.
Yeah, because then you'll never do anything.
Ever.
Yeah.
Ever. I mean, yeah, you want to do the best job that you can, but if you say, and it's going to be perfect, you're just setting yourself up for failure, for disappointment. And it was just an incredible feeling to be able to help out in the manner that we did. And, hopefully we've learned some lessons in terms of our power grid to avoid that disaster all over again. Yeah,
it's such an insane time. I never thought, because I even asked my mom sometimes, like, did you all ever go through any of this stuff? No. It's a very strange time. And I always tell everybody that I talk to is like, it's like we all know something, but we're not being let in on it. That's how I feel. Yeah. And it's just a very weird time. But Jesse, I know you're a busy man. So once again, I'd like to thank you for your time. I know we had planned on 30 minutes, but this is a great thing about podcasting because it goes where it goes.
Yeah, it's funny because my wife asked me, how long is the podcast? I go, honey, I don't know. I mean, I've listened to some podcasts that are 15 minutes long and then others are 30, others are an hour. I go, that's up to Josh, not up to me. It's his podcast. And she's like, okay.
Awesome.
So I don't know if she's watching today, but
I appreciate your time. I know I've always respected you. I respect what you're doing in the marketing and advertising aspect. So everybody, Jay Gonzalez.
Thank you for having me, Josh. It was a pleasure, and it's my first podcast ever, and it was a great experience. And that's a testament to you because sometimes when people aren't comfortable and they do something and they hate it, they never do it again. Yeah. And it really isn't the thing; it's the person that introduces them to it. But you did a great job.
Awesome. I appreciate it. We'll see y'all soon.
Bye-bye.